This is the brand new Santa Cruz Hightower V4. So what's new and what differences does that make to one of my all-time favourite all-round trail bikes? So straight away, you're probably going to notice that unsurprisingly, the bottom end of this bike now shares, well, it's basically almost identical to the new Bronson, which debuted just a few weeks ago. Whereas the Hightower is 29er wheels, both ends. The Bronson is mixed wheels, so 29er front, 27.5 rear. However, they both now have this new lowered shock, lowered and moved forward lower VPP linkage, and they've moved to a bushing at the rear, and also this new triangulated lower seat tube section, whereas previously it was a single strut. You've now got this window in here that, and it's still not super easy to see, but a lot easier to see the sag marker, and it's a lot easier to access that high-low geometry change chip there. Now the big difference that makes is it changes the anti-squat of the rear suspension system. Santa Cruz VPP has always been a high anti-squat system, and across the latest generations of bikes we've seen them move to lower and lower anti-squat values, and by that means there's basically less kickback through the suspension when you hit a square edge, so the cranks aren't turning backwards as much as they did before for a given impact, and that means a smoother, more supple ride, particularly when on the power. However, it means that the suspension, because of where the pivot is, can't move backwards as easily when it slaps into a flat face or high-speed impact. So it'll be much more similar in how it feels to something like a 4-bar linkage, like on a Specialized, but it doesn't have quite the distinctive kind of trapdoor effect of the earlier VPP bikes, and also it doesn't have as positive kind of a stiffening of the rear end under pedaling, which, if you're an aggressive pedaler like I am, is something that I actually really like. So the good news on this bike for me personally is, while they have reduced the anti-squat, they haven't reduced it as much as they did on the Bronson. So the Bronson has now dropped to 110% at 30% sag, whereas this bike is still 120%. So it's still a relatively high anti-squat bike, which, as you can tell, brand new bike. I've not ridden it yet, hitting the trails on it tomorrow, so there'll be a live ride review on this bike coming up very, very soon. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled for that. But it should mean a more positive feel under power, plus you've got easier roll from that 29 rear wheel. So while I find the Bronson to be a bit sluggish and a bit reluctant to climb, it's very much a case of being patient and then reaping the rewards on the descents, this should be a faster rolling and more responsive bike. Plus, interestingly, I mean, we'll go into the details on why, because it's mostly due to the build kit. This bike is over 600 grams lighter than the Bronson, even though it's got that larger rear wheel. And that means it's only 300 grams heavier than the previous Hightower, whereas the current Bronson is nearly a kilo heavier than the previous. But while they've reduced the anti-squat, which potentially reduces its appetite for bigger hits, they've also increase the rear wheel travel up to 150 mil from 145. So there's more travel to absorb those bigger hits now. So it'll be really interesting to see how this package plays out on the trails. In terms of other details, it's a CC carbon frame that I'm testing here. So that's the top spec frame. It's a more expensive, higher performance carbon layup than the more affordable C bikes, and also CC bikes are wireless only, so there is no cable ports at all on this bike for cable gears, but C grade bikes do get wired cable ports, and you'll be able to buy both CC and C frames separately. So apart from that, and the layup, which accounts for about 200 grams of extra weight. The strengths and stiffnesses are actually the same. They just need to use more carbon in the C models because it's a more affordable blend of carbon. And you just get the same lifetime warranty as well, but it's just a little bit heavier. But you can't really tell. Apart from that, you can't tell. Colours are the same and all the features are the same. And there's a lot of features to talk about on this bike. So first up, while it is wireless only, you have got, cheek insertion for the brake cables and the dropper cable. There's no nasty internal headset routing. You've got a new latch on the glove box hatch, which is literally poetry in motion. Plus you've got reworked bags in there as well. Although handily, I actually put them over there. So you've got slightly different tool purse and tool wallet sitting inside there. And it's actually quite a nice chance to look at how neat and clean the layup is inside. You've got a little bit less storage space underneath there, but because it's a larger volume tube overall, it's almost e-bike size. But you've got more volume upstream of that hatch, so kind of works out similarly. Then on the underside, you've got tailgate armour, you've got belly armour stretching all the way underneath here. You've got a really nice, I really like this. It's always reminds, I've said it before, but it really reminds me of those big paddle motocross treads they used on films like the Dune scenes in Krusty Demons of Dirt, the famous motocross film. And that first saw that on the Heckler SL, but these flaps really help when the chain's really thrashing around on this bike. They'll help deaden the sound there. And it's an above and under wrap on those. And there's rubber protection on the inside of the seat stay there as well. Looking at the linkages, like I say, this lower linkages moves forward and down slightly to change the kinematic. And then you've got this machined upper linkage. And then the shock, as you can see, sits right inside this trough on the frame now. It used to just sit on top, but it's really recessed in, which means the whole shock can drop down, which means they can get everything lower to the BB, which is effectively how they change that anti-squat on there. Moving back, UDH hanger, as you'd expect. Nice, neat exit routing there for the Maven rear brake, and it's 180mm post-mount direct. And moving around to the other side here, you can see there's a little mudguard bolted on there to protect the rear of the shock. You've got these serviceable collet bearings, so you can pull those apart, clean them, get in there to tighten them up if they come loose. You've got the bolt for the high-low chip there, which changes the angles by roughly ½ degree, and it also changes the shock progression rate. And you've got a little Xerx injection port there for a grease gun, so you can slap I mean, this is proper old school maintenance, but I love it. I love the fact that Santa Cruz still do this. So you stick the gun on there, pump it full of grease, and that squeezes out, flushes the dirty grease out of your pivots, and means you can basically refresh your suspension without pulling it all apart. But it's once you get the knack of it, it's really easy to work on anyway. Plus Santa Cruz pivots are all lifetime warranty, just like the frame and like these reserve wheels that come as standard on this build kit. I mean, they don't come as standard on every build kit, but the two top ones, you get these reserve carbon wheels as standard, and they have a proper no fuss warranty on them. If you wreck them, Santa Cruz will replace them. Plus, they've got a really nice ride quality to them, and they're still the HD model rather than the SL model, which is interesting, but it kind of chimes with the rest of the build kit that they've put together on this Hightower. But before we talk about that, let's have a quick chat about the Geo. And again, it's relatively subtle differences. As it is with most bikes at the moment, they haven't done massive changes because they were pretty much, where they needed to be anyway. So it's 0.6 degree slacker in the head. So it's now 63.9 degrees. It's about a degree steeper in the seat angle, so it's 77.9 degrees. Reach has extended by about 6mm to 478 on this large. But pretty much everything else apart from that, 430mm seat tube is a little bit lower. 440mm rear end, a little bit longer. I think it's about 2mm longer on the rear centers, and all rear centers, like the carbon layups, are proportionate, so you get a different length rear end for each of the 5 different sizes, from small through to extra extra large. BB height is 341, which equates to a 32mm BB drop, and then you've got a 1265mm wheelbase. And if a lot of those numbers seem familiar, they are almost identical to its mixed wheel cousin, the Bronson. The only really significant difference is the fact that the rear centre, so the effective chainstay length on this bike, is actually shorter. Even though you've got a full-size 29er wheel in there, not a 27.5, the back end is actually 3mm shorter on a given size. Well, it is on this large anyway. So you're actually getting a shorter rear end and a shorter wheelbase. So it'll be really, really interesting to see how much difference that makes versus the difference that's made with the smaller rear wheel and the different BB drop, the different effective BB drop of using that mullet setup. And then talking about the spec, again, with the increased travel, with the lowered anti-squat, it does move into a more gravity realm. So you've got these big Maven brakes, the latest high-power SRAM brakes in this silver stealth version. But rather than going for all-out braking, so the Bronson gets 200mm front rotor, Hightower only gets 180mm rotors front and rear. I mean, say only, but those are the really thick HS2 rotors, and that is such a powerful brake. I'm pretty sure that'll be more than ample stopping power. And then you've got Fox 36 Grip X2 factory fork. You've got Float X rear shock, again, factory spec. So you've got that Kashima Gold, it's the top of the range. You've got a firm switch for pedaling, you've got low speed compression and rebound on there, externally adjustable, and actually this bike will take a coil shock if you want it to as well. So you've got SRAM EXO transmission with this super stealthy black chrome, super hard wearing flat top chain, XO rear mech with T-type transmission, so bolts directly onto the frame for super stiff, accurate, and very, very strong construction. Rear mech's fully rebuildable. I've done a full SRAM axis video. If you want to dive deeper into that transmission, go watch that. But basically, the shifts are a little bit slower, but they're a lot more accurate and a lot more consistent, and they're amazing under power. It actually shifts better under power, whereas most gear systems, you have to kind of back off a little bit on the torque to get a smooth chain. SRAM T-type genuinely shifts better the harder you pedal. We've already talked about the Reserve HD wheels, but in terms of tyres, you're getting a Minion DHR2 on the rear, 29 by 2.4, Max Terra 3C, and it's EXO protection, so you're getting a decent reinforced carcass on there. And then up front, you have got Minion DHF 29 by 2.5. Now it's 3C max grip and it's EXO protection, so it is a sticky, sturdy tyre, but it should roll a little bit faster than the Assegai fitted to the Bronson. Plus, as I've already said, that 29er rear wheel, even though it's a chunky tread, again, it should roll noticeably faster than that 27.5-inch rear wheel. And then in terms of finishing kit, got Santa Cruz grips. Obviously, you've got that SRAM axis controller. You've got a Bergtech stem. And then you've got a one-up dropper post, which is one of the most reliable and easily adjustable seat posts available. And they haven't gone super long on the strokes, but as you can see, there's still plenty of room to fit a longer stroke if you wanted to. And I know people seem to be obsessed with having the longest stroke possible in their bike, but for me, with my knees, that 170 is more than enough in terms of drop, and it certainly gets me adequately low on the bike. And like I say, while things like I think the fork's slightly heavier than it used to be, the Maven brakes are certainly heavier, and it's just got a standard steel railed saddle now, rather than a tie-railed saddle, you do save a little bit of weight by having that cable-operated post, whereas the previous Hightower I tested, the V3, had a reverb axis, which is wireless, which is fancy, but they're also heavy. So you're trading a little bit of weight here, and like I say, weight gain, not that much. So about 176 grams, I think, Santa Cruz said for the Bronson in terms of weight gain on the frame. So I'm imagining it's similar here. So you're gaining about another 120 grams in terms of components. So not nearly as much of an issue as I found it with the Bronson. And the really good news about this is the price has actually gone down significantly in terms of retail price on this Exo Axis Reserve spec on the V4 Hightower compared to the V3. I can remember last time it jumped up about £1,000 because last time it was when it got the glove box and other changes on it, so a significantly more complicated frame. I think price went up £1,000 compared to the V2. This time it drops down £800. So it's still a premium bike, but it's significantly cheaper than it was before. And you still get all those lifetime warranty on frame, bearings and wheels benefits. And Santa Cruz are a great company in terms of investing in mountain biking all over the globe through their Pay Dirt program, and obviously keeping us entertained with their syndicate racing as well. So they are a really proactive company, so it's not like you're just lining their pockets when you pay the premium. And of course, you know, they are a top-end brand that will give you serious kudos at the trailhead. And talking of kudos at the trailhead, it comes in this matte purple, but it also comes in a rather glorious dark green, which is my personal favourite. So there you go. There's the tech talk round. Now, if you watch the channel regularly, you'll know I normally do these after I've ridden the bike, so I can tell you definitely what effects any changes and spec have had on the performance of the bike, having ridden it on the trail. Now, I've had to do this before I've ridden the bike, but my live reaction ride review will be up very, very shortly, hopefully later today. So make sure you check back in to watch that and see how this new Hightower performs on some of my favourite local trails and ones I've ridden both the old Hightower on and the new Bronson. Because I think a lot of people are going to want to know how the Bronson and the Hightower now compare. Both super popular bikes in the Santa Cruz lineup, but both are quite different people now. I mean, Santa Cruz even say in their launch material that they haven't tried to make this bike something it's not. They've moved it a little more sort of gravity biased because that's the way that trail riding's going. But they talk about it as a more mature, settled and confident ride, which I'm hoping that doesn't mean boring, because the Bronson has definitely got a lot more stable, it's got a lot more planted, it's got a lot more sure-footed, but I kind of miss the playfulness and agility. But as this is lighter, as it's going to roll faster, or it should do anyway, and because the anti-squat reduction isn't as dramatic, so it should still have some kick and some responsiveness built into the suspension. So click for notifications so you know when that video goes live. If you haven't already subscribed yet, curse you. Please just click that subscribe button. It makes a massive difference to my YouTube algorithm, which means more people get shown the videos and then everything spirals upwards. Give it a thumbs up, like. Tell your mates to come and watch the channel if you've got this far. I didn't even say at the start like I normally do. I've been doing this 7 years, so hopefully I can offer some real insight and context to things I'm talking about compared to people who might not have that level of experience. But also, if you really like what I'm doing on the channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon, which is my monthly subscription channel, where you'll get early, inside and ad-free edits of most of my videos as a thank you. And also you get kind of a higher level of question response, personal shopping advice, whatever you want to call it. I'm more than happy to give plenty of time to my Patreon subscribers, because I really appreciate them supporting the channel and making it more sustainable long term. And also massive thanks to my industry sponsors, whose names are at the start of the video and they'll be at the end. And if you're shopping for new mountain bike kit, then please consider those guys because they've been good enough to support me. So if you could support them, then that would be splendid. But for now, I've been Guy Kestevan on Guy Kes TV in the middle of the damn night talking about the latest Santa Cruz Hightower V4 before I stick some pedals on it and hit the trails first thing tomorrow morning when I'll record that live reaction review for you, and we'll see if these small changes to the new Hightower make a big difference out on some big trails. But to be honest, I don't really want big changes because the Hightower V3 is one of my favourite all-time bikes. It's a really, really subtle, nuanced, refined bike. So I'm hoping this just gets better in some aspects without taking away just that real premium sort of next level feel that the previous Hightower had. But I guess we're going to have to find out on the trails of Ilkley Moor later today. But thanks as ever for your support. You really are bloody legends.